Hello students, I hope all is well. I'm here with a tutorial on Udacity's front-end nano degree, the memory game project. Now, what I'm going to do is go through the rubric with you and look at each spec. I'm going to compare my project against this rubric and help you guys get an idea of how to implement each of these requirements and prepare your project for submission. All right. Now, I'm using Atom Text Editor. I have my project here on my desktop. Let me just open it. Where is it? Right here. And I have it loaded here in my browser. Now, if I reload it, just to give you an idea of how it looks, I have a feature where it shows you temporarily where all the cards are. You have a reset method here. It will change all of the cards. You can see they're in different locations, right? And then I have this info button that kind of shows how the game works. If you finish within 12 moves, then it's great. 13 to 24 is average, and 25 or more moves is poor. Now, every 2 clicks is considered 1 move, as you see. And the moment you start clicking, the timer starts moving. So again, if you refresh it, you start from nothing. The moment you click a single card, the time starts moving and you can start playing the game. Now, once you click 2 markers, you can't really click. I add a little pause feature to it, and the moves increase for every time you compare it. Now, looking at the code, I have the index file here. The file that's given has all of the cards as list items within this unordered list. I removed them because in my code I added them dynamically. Here I have a modal which will pop up whenever the game is finished, and then I have at the top of the unordered list, I have the section that has all of the buttons and information about the game. For example, the stars, the moves count, the time, and a message like no match, right? Now, most of the work is being done inside the app.js. Now, let's take a look at what's going on inside of here. Now, I added a event listener, document.ready. This is from jQuery. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to have a closure. I don't want to pollute the global scope with all of these variables. And it's also just good for like scoping. Now, the first part of the rubric is game behavior. So, memory game logic, congratulations pop up, your star button, star rating, timer, and move counter, right? So let's start with memory game logic. Now, the game shouldn't move the time when it first loads. It should only move the time or start the timer when you start the first click. Now, it should only work, or as far as matching, it should only work when you click 2 of the same cards. So if I reset it, I can see bomb is here, bomb, and arrows, arrows. So if I click 2 that match, it's a match found, right? Same thing. Fight under. So basically, every time you click 2 cards, that counts as 1 move, right? Now you can keep going indefinitely. There's no like stopping. It's just a matter of how many moves does it take for you to actually complete or actually win the game. So once you do win the game, once I actually do it, let's say, so must be these two. Now, once you actually finish the game, you can notice that the star rating changed. Once you finish the game, a pop-up window shows, it says congrats. Game results, it took me exactly 1 minute, 16 moves, which is average. You can choose to replay it or close it, and that's about it. That's the entire game. So I would say that the biggest concepts that you're demonstrating in this project is just object-oriented programming and DOM manipulation. So that's it for game logic. So as far as shuffling cards, I think it's easier to add the cards to the deck dynamically. Udacity will give it to you with all of these list items. So for example, if we come to the classroom, Udacity, and we see their repository where you can clone the starter code. We go inside the index HTML, we can see that all of the list items are inside the deck. And I decided to add them programmatically so it would be easier to shuffle. Now inside of app.js, I have all of these cards here, which represents each of the list items that I will create. And then I have a constructor function for watch. This will be my timer. This is coming from a script I made, which is right here. I'm going to add this in the description below this video. Now basically it's just a constructor function that it lets you start a timer, and you can pass in a callback which will get called for each second of the timer. Now other than that, I'm pretty much, for this little portion right here, I'm just getting all of the HTML elements that I know I'm going to be mutating throughout the app. So I'm getting the modal, I'm getting the deck, I'm getting the text or spans where I'm going to change text, stars, reset button, so I can add an event listener like click later, which will reset the game, the info button, message button, and so forth. So in this little section, I'm just getting all the elements I know I will be working with. Now here, I'm just setting some app state, for example, moves, the grade, a boolean that will determine whether the game is over or not, and when the game started. And this will help the app keep track of if the game is currently starting and how to change other information. And I'm going to show you that below. I have an array for matches. I have a variable called last flip, and that will help me compare two cards. And I have a variable called pause, which will add a little buffer time between incorrect moves or incorrect guesses. Now, I'm going to start off with changing the grade span, which is this right here. It's going to show up, let's say right here. So I'm going to set some initial state to the text on the page. This shuffle function, Udacity already provided in this code. It came from this Stack Overflow review. Now, I created a function for pretty much every aspect of the game. So there's a function to reset, there's a function to determine that the game is over, there's a function to start the game, there's a function that shows the alert window, one for giving a hint, one for getting a random item out the array, one for comparing the cards, which is, I would say, is one of the biggest portions that I'm going to go over. Now, I'm going to start off by going through each of the smaller functions that I created and how everything ties together. So in this create card function, basically I accept one of these classes as the argument. I'm going to create a list item. I'm going to add the class card, and I'm also going to add card dash whatever class was when it got called. So looking at the app, if I were to inspect it, we can see that it has card dash FA dash both, right? So we're adding those two classes. I'm setting a data attribute, data.card to card class, and this will help me compare two different cards later down the line. You can use HTML's data attribute to store arbitrary information. For example, if you were to search that, we can look at these two resources are good. So basically we can store information inside a element using data, right? So after data dash, we can call it whatever we want to. This site does a better job explaining it. I'm using it for the purpose of storing that card class. I'm going to create the font awesome I tag that would be nested inside of it. And after creating these elements, I'm just going to return it. Now I'm going to add an event listener for all of the buttons and then set the callback to the respective functions. Now for the update grade, basically I'm checking the moves count, right? Now if it's greater than 12, then we're no longer at grade, but we're at average. And if it's not at average, then we just set it to average, so we're not repeating this portion over and over again. Same thing for moves. If we're past a certain point, we're going to change the grade to poor and then update the text on the screen. And I'm also going to remove one of the stars out from the star list. Now there's a function to clear the deck. There's a function that will generate the cards, all of them, right? So inside this function, basically I'm going to call shuffle, passing in a card classes list, and this is what will make the cards show up in different order every time. Now for each well, I should have done for each, but there are multiple ways to loop through it. I know that there's 16 cards, so this was how I did it at the time. Inside this loop, we're going to pretty much get that card and then create a new element out of that. And once we do that, we're going to add it to the deck, which is that unordered list. Now there's a function called activate the cards. Now in this function that I made, I will pretty much go through each of the cards by doing document.query selector all, and for each card I'm going to add an event listener, which is click. Now whenever you click a card, I'm going to check if game start equal to false, which is the initial value that it has, right? And because it's in a closure, no one can't come into the console and change the values of any of the variables. So we know that did game start starts off with false. Now if it is false, then that means this must be the very first click of that game. So we're going to set it to true. So that way the next time this gets called, this will fail because did game start will equal true. Now once we set it true for the first time, we're going to start the timer. Now for each second, I'm passing in this callback function, which will update the text on the page with the current time. Now I have this block here that will check certain things to prevent like errors from happening. So I have a variable last flipped that I showed you earlier. This is how I'll compare each card with what was clicked last. If card is equal to last flip, that means that a user must have clicked the same card twice, and you can't compare a card to itself. So if the last card is equal to the same one we're clicking now, or if matches includes card, meaning this card's already been matched, or if the game was paused, or if the game is over, if any of these is true, then we're going to prevent the game from moving any forward because it will cause an error otherwise. Now, once it passed through these checks, we're going to add the open and show classes, which will pretty much represent a flipped card. Now, if last flipped, meaning that if this has a value, then we're going to execute this entire block. If not, because last flip starts off as null, having no value, we're just going to set that card to last flip. So the next time around when this function runs, last flip will be truthy. It will be defined. Now, for the next card click, we're going to select this card, or rather create a variable called this card, and we're going to get that first children because each li element has that I tag within it, and then we're going to get that attribute data.card that we added dynamically in our function above. We're going to do that for this current card and the last flipped card. We're going to increase the moves count because that is considered one move. When you click two cards, I'm going to update the text with moves. As you see right here, 0 moves. If I were to click another card, we can see that it goes to 1. I will call upgrade or update grade after each 2 clicks. So that way we can keep track of the performance. Now, if this card is equal to last card, meaning the 2 different cards have the same class, that must mean it's a match. So in order to, I guess, signify that a card is a match, we add the match class to them. So if I were to refresh this, I can see the leaf one right here. I click both of them, they're no longer blue, but rather they're green, which signifies a match. Now, once I match those 2 elements, I'm going to push both of them into the matches array. I'm going to clear last flip, so that way we can compare 2 cards again. Now, if matches.length is equal to 16, meaning we matched every card, then we're going to call game over. Now, if it's not a match, this else block will fall through. And basically, we're just going to pause the game for a little bit by setting pause to true. You can't click again because if you were, this callback would stop at this point because pause would be truthy. We're going to set a timeout. I'm going to remove both the open and show classes on both those cards. And then once we do that, last flip again will be set to null, pause will be false, which will allow us to click different cards again, right? So just to get an idea what that looks like, I can see two airplanes, paper airplanes. If I click the two, you can see that I can no longer click them again. I would have to click two different cards, and it will pretty much do what it's supposed to do. Now, as far as get random item, I don't recall using this or why I have it defined. I was using this hint function at some point in time, but I stopped using it. Info, this pretty much took hint's place. I have a start function which will pretty much generate the cards, activate them, and then flash the message. Now, function game over is pretty much going to set the game state, which is the variables. It's going to set its game over to true. Watch.stop timer is going to update the values inside the modal, and then it's going to open it. Now inside reset game, this is just so if it's a link or if there's anything that is going to be called besides what we want to be called, then this will prevent that. So let's say we have a link tag. Instead of actually going to that link, it would prevent that. So first we want to clear the deck. Once everything's cleared, we want to regenerate the cards, and then we want to activate them again. And then we're going to reset the timer. After calling these functions, I'm going to reset the game state to its initial values. I'm going to rebuild the stars list. That pretty much signifies performance. And then I have a flash message, which will show up right here. And that is about it as far as game logic. Now, congratulations pop up. I recommend users use another library like Bootstrap or Materialize because they have code that makes it easy to just render a modal pop-up, right? Instead of doing it through a button on the page. You want it to have it show up programmatically. So if you're comfortable with UI or UX and you want to style your own modal, that's fine. But as far as saving time and not reinventing the wheel, then Bootstrap and Materialize have their own modal styles. And it's easy to use. Now, restart button, basically it comes, if I'm not mistaken, yes, it comes with, I guess, a few buttons here. All you have to do is go into your page and just add an event listener to it, which will respond to certain user interaction or start functions. So we have that. Star rating, that's completely up to you. I just decided that if moves variable past a certain number, then it's just going to update the grade or update the performance. So timer, there are plenty libraries out there. I created one just for, I won't say just for like this project, but it's a good timer. It's simple, straight, and to the point. It goes up to seconds, minutes, and hours. You can run a callback function for each second inside that timer. Move counter, same thing, just a lot of information is stored in variables. I'm only going to increment moves when I'm comparing two cards. Now, interface design, styling. Udacity comes with the styling already done. There's not too much you have to do, but the rubric is expecting that it looks good on the phone, which is weird. I'll probably just have a I guess, a box saying this is best played on desktop, but Udacity wants you all to make it responsive. So make sure that inside your style sheet you are using media queries so you can change the design at different viewports. So for example, if I change it to, let's say, iPhone 6, it looks just fine as it would on a regular desktop. Now, usability. Again, it's rendering fine on mobile devices. It's rendering fine, I would say, on a tablet, say iPad. This looks just about right. And it looks good on desktop already. So not too much design issues as far as I can tell. Now, documentation, you have a README just like every other project. The comments are presented and effectively explain logic code. So I would say like how I have comment here, where whenever you have functions that have a lot of logic going on, it would help to have comments that would explain to yourself or other people what's going on here exactly. Code quality, basically you want to follow the best standard practices, which are indentation, no white lines. Make sure everything is clean and readable. Now, I think that's about it for this project. I want to make sure that I'm going through each spec so you guys can understand how to do it yourself and prepare for submission. I'm just going to go through this rubric one more time. As far as game logic, so essentially you're going to need quite a few functions. I'll say for each aspect of the game, I have a function that handles that. I think functions to just do one particular job. I have a function that will create the card, a function that will upgrade the performance grade. I have a function that will clear the deck, one that will generate cards, a function that will activate the cards, one for giving a hint, one for getting random item out of an array, one for actually starting the game, which will call other functions, game over, reset the game. So once you create these, I guess, functions that handles their specific blocks, you will tie them all together, right? So after everything, once I call start, it's going to generate the cards because there are none in the markup. So I'm going to generate the cards, activate them, and then flash the cards, basically giving a hint. Now, congratulations pop up. Again, I think it's easier to just load some UI library like Materialize or Foundation or most notably Bootstrap. Use their modal component. All you have to do is just import their styles. Just copy something from their example and just fill in like your information in place of theirs. So for example, I'm using Materialize, I think, if I remember correctly. Yes, Materialize, and at the bottom I have this simple div, which is game modal. Congrats. I have spans with IDs, so I can just fill in the right data once the game ends. Now the restart button, I think the code that you actually give has it by default, which is right here, reset button. All you would do is go into your app. You would pretty much select it, right? And then you would just add an event listener. So whenever it gets clicked, it's going to run a certain function. Now the star rating, that's a bit unique. Every student will have their own, I guess, implementation of it. Basically, the way I did it was, I know that it starts off at great, and the moves are 0. Now, once I activate the cards and you can start clicking around, moves will change, and I'm going to call update grade, which will pretty much see how what moves or what count would result in what performance. So once it passes a certain number, it's going to update the grade variable. Now timer, there are a lot of libraries out there. I made one, there's timer.js. There's countless out there. I think mine's is more simpler and straight to the point as far as what this project needs. This function for clearing deck, basically once you have all your functions, you just tie them all together. Now interface design, in my style sheet, I have at the bottom I have media queries that will change the size of the cards and decks so they can still fit the screen. So I recommend using media queries to help render the game board on all devices. Now documentation, I don't think that's the hard part. Most text editors will have a plugin that will properly format your code. You'll have your README and comments. You can just use those for longer function blocks. That will help explain what's going on. Now, I think that covers all of it. If there's any questions, just leave a comment in the comment section below. And with that, I hope you have a good day and take care. Thanks for watching.